So, in a smaller but growing city like Spokane, do you like to live where in the middle of where the action is, or out in the country by yourself, or maybe somewhere in between? Well, that's what we're discussing in this video, and let's see what your options are.
Before COVID, Spokane International was growing leaps and bounds each year.
Uh-huh.
Our cargo traffic and passenger traffic was really growing. Now we've got to write off 2020. I think we just don't even look at it. In 2021, we're probably going to have to write half of that off too. But with all the dynamics, with the kinds of things that we're seeing, I have trouble believing anything different than Spokane's going to pretty much pick up where it left off and just keep growing. The kind of growth that we've seen and the kind of the desire to get out of some of the bigger cities on the West Coast, some of the unrest. Certainly, COVID has driven people to smaller communities. I just think that we're going to rock and roll, but it's created some interesting challenges. Amazon coming in with roundly 1,500 people suddenly creates a huge burden on the school district, and they've got a real challenge in trying to play catch up. Fairchild Air Force Base with 437 new Air Corps people. They put another wing at Fairchild. If those 437 people represent a household each, theoretically there's a couple of children there that are going to have to find their way into a school somewhere, and plus food, plus all the other sorts of things. So when you see such a concentration of new jobs going into one area, you can imagine the burden it places on some of the infrastructure.
Right. Okay. I don't see the equivalent or the proportional development in residential. Is that correct, or am I perceiving that differently?
Well, I think we're behind the curve in residential, to be honest with you. We had a good inventory of lots coming out of the recession, out of the Great Recession. They were purchased cheaply. A lot of them were developed or in the development pipeline before the recession. Sat stagnant on the market and then were purchased by developers or others. And I think to a limited degree anyway, they got a little bit comfortable sitting on their inventory of lots. And then as our growth spurt really started in 2016, that inventory got depleted fairly quickly. And it's 18 to 24 months to bring new lots on to, from the planning stage to the delivery stage. And so we're a little bit behind the curve. So we see that multifamily has really taken off. I think part of that, I think we've got several movers in that area. We had some people who frankly lost their houses in the last recession, who found themselves into apartments and who stayed there. Apartments are usually the first stopping point for people moving into the community. Certainly the price of housing has gone up. It's kept some people from getting into the market. $1 million houses are now 7 days on the market before they're sold instead of 7 months. So, and $1 million house isn't quite as special as $1 million house used to be either.
Yeah.
So we're behind the curve on housing a little bit. We're seeing, frankly, we're beginning to rub up against, I think, some growth management boundary limitations.
Okay. What is the future of the West Plains residentially?
Well, I'm seeing some property being developed as far out as Davenport now. So
wow.
Another 15 miles away from Fairchild Air Force Base.
Okay.
I think our inventory, to go back just for a minute into growth management, I think our inventory of land is an artificial number. There's quite a bit of unbuildable land in that inventory, whether it's wetlands or steeply sloping lands or ground that can't really practically be developed. So we don't have as great a capability of growing as maybe it might appear on paper. There are some developments going on the West Plains. We have a lot of the West Plains is in airport overlay zones. Either for Fairchild, it's a noise zone, or for Spokane International, it's a airport safety zone, which kind of precludes having housing.
Okay.
So when you've got several thousand acres of land that can't be built into housing, it becomes a bit of a challenge. We don't have a lot of land in the city of Spokane anymore.
Right.
We've seen now that the county has finally, and ahead of time, to their credit, ahead of their original schedule, has pushed sewer now up Highway 2 into that Mount Spokane Park Highway 2 area. where there were critical aquifer recharge area restrictions. So you're very severely limited to what you could do on a septic system. But with sewer up in that area, I think we may see some growth now. We're going to need the growth management boundaries to be adjusted to accommodate more platting up in that area. I think one of the interesting things we're going to learn this year is what the real population is based on the census. I don't think we know, and here's why I say that. And this has an influence on how much housing gets built, quite frankly. A couple of years ago, I was looking at how tight the housing market had become, how tight the multifamily market had become, and it didn't seem to jive with what they were telling us at the Office of Financial Management for population growth. So I made a very simple calculation. I said, let's assume a couple of things. Let's take a look at every building permit that's been let for a house, and let's say that every one of those houses got built. And I think that's a pretty safe bet. And then let's use the number of people per household that came from the 2010 census, and let's put a household in each one of those houses. How many people does that represent? So last time I did the numbers, I think was 2019. In Coeur d'Alene, it suggested they were undercounting the population by about 9%.
Wow.
If that number is real.
That's huge.
It's a gigantic number. And in Spokane, the number wasn't quite that egregious, but I think it's an interesting way to look at what population trends are from the ground level up. And I really think that maybe we have more population than people think we have, and that's what's kind of driven our markets in the direction it has. And maybe it hasn't driven public policy in the direction it should have gone, or as quickly as it could have gone.
That's a big number.
Big number.
So,
I just did some things. You might find this interesting. Someone told me the other day, anecdotally, they said, there are 1,000 driver's licenses a month getting surrendered in Spokane County from other states and other places.
1,000 per month.
1,000 per month, which was a number I could never have imagined. So I went back. I went to the State Department of Licensing and I pulled the numbers, and they're exceptionally detailed. They not only have 50 states plus the District of Columbia, but they have 200 or 300 countries as to where the driver's license surrenders come from. And it's Afghanistan to Zimbabwe and everybody in between.
And this is in the span of 1 year or what?
They do it month by month when the surrenders are. And every month they publish the data for every place that the driver's license had been surrendered. So I went back through the last 12 months. December was the last time, and we had 8,571 licenses surrendered in Spokane County from other states and other countries. And of those, 8,455 were from other states. And of those, 20.27% were from California, or 1,714 people.
Okay.
In the last 12 months. So are we getting 1,000 a month? Well, December was 738, November was 951, October was 1370, September was 1209, 1338 in August. Now they had, as you might not be surprised, in April they had 0 because they were closed.
Yeah.
And they had 2 in May. And they started picking up in June, and then July got right back on track again. But those are big numbers. There's almost 8,600 people moved into Spokane County. Now, I don't know what the net is, how many moved out.
Right.
That's a big number. That's a lot of people surrendering driver's licenses. Now, maybe they're like my friends who move in and don't surrender a license for 2 or 3 years. But if we were to really market Spokane Coeur d'Alene as a metro area, as it should be, in my opinion, and I understand why Coeur d'Alene doesn't want to be part of Spokane, they've got their own cachet, but we'd be about 68th in the nation in size. That would bring a lot more attention to us. That would bring a lot more dollars to us. It would make us more eligible for federal money in certain areas.
Well, that concludes part 4 in our video series. As you can see, housing builders are feverishly trying to catch up. But here's the next question. Do we have the roads to support our growing city? That's the subject of the Part 5 episode. I'll meet you over there.